Hi quilters, this is Shelley Robson from the Quilted Forest, and we're inviting you to join us for a mystery quilt. What is a mystery quilt, you might be asking yourself? Well, a mystery quilt is when you get a pattern or a set of clues, usually one a month or one a week or whatever the mystery happens to be, and you work on the pattern without knowing what the end result would be. We are going to do a 6-week mystery, and each week you will get part of a pattern to finish a quilt. The finished size will be 60 by 60. The quilt to be bigger, you can add a border to it to make it 72 by 72. Each week you will do a little bit of cutting, a little bit of sewing, of course some ironing because everybody needs to press their pieces flat, and then set them aside until the next week. Mystery quilts are a lot of fun to work on, and we hope you will take a chance and trust us that the pattern will be good and make a quilt with us. Let's get started. Fabric requirements for this mystery are a background fabric 2 1/4 yards, fabric A 1 1/8, fabric B 1 1/8, fabric C 1 yard, and fabric D 3/4. If you choose to get a border fabric, you can also get 1 5/8 yard of that, and then a binding of 5/8 yard. I'm trying to pick my fabric, and here's my first selection, which would be a Christmas version. The background's a grunge, and the other 4 prints on top would be the A, B, C, D, and then the bottom 2 are a border and a binding. Or do I want to do a Halloween version? The bottom piece would be the border fabric. I've got a white with a little bit of orange in it for the background, and then orange and black for the A, B, C, D. That's a tough choice. I love Halloween. Possibly a batik version. I've got the A, B, C, D fabrics on top. I'm going to use a plain black, which would be the background, and then that piece on the bottom would be the outer border. Another selection I was kind of thinking of was this 30s. Would be just a white for the background, and then 4 different colors. You could do that with regular fabric too, just 4 different colors. Just pick an A, B, C, and D. And then I was also thinking this would be a great pattern for a patriotic version. So I've got my border fabric on the bottom, a white with stars on it, and then A, B, C, and D. And you could also do the scrappy if you wanted to. It'd be a little bit trickier, but you could do it. If you do want to do it scrappy, I think you would want to stick with one fabric for fabric A, and then make sure that like fabric B is always green, fabric C is always red, fabric D is always yellow. You could make it work. And the winner is, I decided to go with the Christmas version. I've been wanting to make a new Christmas version, and I thought this was the perfect opportunity. Now, I've got the pattern on here. If you wanted to have a paper copy of it, you could screenshot it and then print it, or you could just pause on this screen at any point, and then you'll have the directions so that you can see what you're doing. But one thing I would strongly suggest is to make a key so that you know which fabric is which. I found that this helps me remember what I planned, and I don't make cuts that are wrong. So make a fabric key. Time to do some cutting. I'm going to speed this up a little bit for you. From fabric A, you need to cut 6 strips that are 2 1/2 by the width of fabric, and that will let you cut 48 rectangles that are 2 1/2 by 4 1/2. I've usually got 2 strips and I'm cutting at a time, so it might look like I only cut 3, but there were actually 6 there. From the background fabric, you will also cut 6 strips that are 2.5 by width of fabric, and that will allow you to cut 48 squares that are 2.5 by 2.5. Clue number 1, we've got the fabric A pieces, which are the 48 rectangles that are 2.5 by 4.5, and we have the background fabric. We have 48 squares, 2.5 by 2.5. So what you want to do is take a 2.5 inch square and a 2.5 by 4.5 inch rectangle, and you're going to lay that square on one end of the rectangle, and then you're going to sew from corner to corner. You want to make sure that you do them all the same, following the diagram from the clue. So it's going to be upper right to lower left. You can use a friction pen and a ruler and draw a line from corner to corner, so you have a line to follow while you're sewing, and then you can sew right on that line, or you can use the diagonal seam tape by Cluck Cluck Sew and put that tape in front of your foot so that when you are sewing, you have the needle goes under the top corner, and then the bottom corner goes where the red line is, and then as you sew, you just keep following the red line, and that'll give you a straight seam all the way through. And here's sewing on the line. If you're going to do the pen method, sew right on that line. Either way, so you sew them all up, and at the end you will have 48 rectangles with squares sewn on them. When you're done sewing the first seam on all of these pieces, you will trim this seam to 1/4 inch and press. Now, I like to sew an extra seam on these so that I don't throw away these big bits of fabric. So I will find on my sewing machine my 1/2 inch mark. I'm going to put the seam right on the 1/2 inch mark, and I'm just going to eyeball a seam across. And then when I get done, I'm going to sew one more. And just chain stitch those through, just like that. Now, I am going to cut right in between these. That'll give me a 1/4 inch seam for both of these pieces. I'm going to take it to the ironing board and press. So this piece you are going to want to press towards the rectangle fabric, and this I would suggest pressing towards the dark fabric. The nice thing about this at this point is these dog ears are already cut off, and then when you trim these up, you can trim those dog ears up, so the pieces should look like that. So you need 48 of those, and then you will have 48 of those also. Clue number 1 is done. I have my 48 rectangles, and I have my spare triangle units that measured 1 3/4 when I trimmed them up, and I have 48 of those for a future project. Put everything in a bag and tuck it away for next week. We will see you then. Thanks for joining us for the mystery.